Well, look, let's start off with just the impact of the win on Saturday. What have you noticed in amongst the squad since then, and what do you hope this will do for Shrewsbury?
You hope that gives people a bit of belief in terms of the table. Obviously, we moved a couple of places, nothing dramatic, but you want to make sure that gap's not getting too big, which is something that we spoke about. Because there is hell of a long way to go, we know that, but at the same time, like I said, you've got to maintain a belief, and that's a message that I try and give the players. Hopefully themselves can see certain things in games that, we made some better decisions, maybe had a little bit more luck, whatever it is, that some points will come, but then just in and around the place, like, it's natural that a bit more of a smile on people's faces, a bit more sort of relaxed feel, but at the same time, to a degree, that has to go, because you very quickly on to the next one. Thursday night's a strange day for a game of football, but with the TV coverage and more sort of spotlight on Leagues 1 and 2, I guess it's just our sort of turn to experience that.
Yeah, we'll come on to Exeter. You mentioned about the league table. Are you surprised by it? Feels stretched already, the league table. There is a bit of a gap between yourselves, a group of clubs, and then up to around about mid-table.
Yeah.
It just seems a bit more stretched than it normally would be at this time of year.
I guess in general, being fortunate not to experience that side too much. So, I'm not sure of, historically whether that's always been the case or not. I think I've certainly felt would happen and are aware of is the strength of the teams in the league that I've discussed on many occasions, and I think that's having an influence in terms of a lot of teams beating each other, and perhaps not too many sort of shocks, and there's definitely a group of teams that will be expected to be, for most people, the wrong end of the table, and fighting out at that end. So it's not a massive surprise to me, if I'm honest. Sometimes I think people can take it the wrong way, but I class myself as very much a realist, and there's no point, hiding away from situations. So it is kind of not a shock to me, if I'm being brutally honest. But at the same time, we want to obviously try and be as far up that table as we can be.
It is a strong league. Exeter are doing really well. Maybe one of those teams others wouldn't expect naturally to be where they are. But he's built a good team there, hasn't he?
He has, and I think looking back at last season, this is from memory, although I wasn't working in the league at the time, but I'm almost certain that they had a really good start and were perhaps top for a period of time, then had a very difficult period, and then finished the season a bit stronger, and obviously stayed up, I think, relatively comfortable, because my recollection was at one stage it looked like they were slipping into perhaps being in that group of teams that were in sort of trouble of relegation. So credit to them, they played some good football. Like you said, they've had another positive start to the season, and because we're both playing early than the weekend's fixtures, we've got the opportunity to get out of that bottom four, and Exeter have got the opportunity to go up into those playoff spots. So it's certainly an incentive there for both teams, and as I said, we know it's going to be tough. They won at Bolton. That's one of the, you watch numerous games, to be honest. That was one game that we've watched and thought they played really well. And I've had other good results. I've had a little bit of a breather. Whether that's a positive or a negative, I'm not saying that's a big advantage to them, but they have had a little bit of a break. So they've certainly had plenty of time to prepare for the game.
Yeah, and you've had a couple of really good results yourself, so it's going to be a fascinating game. What about just looking at how things have changed over the last couple of games? You've changed formation. I know that it's not something that you tend to like talking about, but do you feel that it has Bally's something that you're going to stick with now, or does it just depend on who you're playing against?
I think it depends. Genuinely, the Bolton game, I always had half an eye of thinking we could very well be, revert to a back three. We did that, and as I kind of, perhaps joked about slightly after the game, we got a point. That would be a very good result. Thought the team played well in certain aspects. The second half, the reality was we had to give up a lot of the ball and quite a lot of territory. Thought we defended well, we performed well from that point of view, but we could have quite easily lost that. And then, does the narrative change? As in, is it about the formation or is it not? And likewise at the weekend, whether we like it or not, the facts of the matter were we were 2-1 down playing that formation. So I think maybe you've had a player do an interview, for instance, perhaps I don't know exact words, but we scored goals when we changed formation at the weekend, as in 4 of them. So it's never as straightforward and as black and white as what it sometimes appears. And a formation is almost a start point, and there's a lot of moving parts within it. And we tried almost sort of switching on Saturday, depending on where the ball was, who had possession of the ball. So it's certainly not as straightforward as what perhaps people think. And like I said, we actually scored the goals when we changed.
Do you have a preference in terms of defensive shape and formation? What do you prefer?
I prefer a back four. I think I've gone on record in saying that 100%. I like playing with wingers when we can. Now, there has to be, in my view, and again this is where some managers are different, I spoke about this earlier in the season, some people will just literally say we are not changing no matter what's happening. Now sometimes that can be deemed as stubborn, stupid, and then other times people will get credit for that, for sticking to their ethos, their principles, philosophy, whatever word you want to use. I think personally you have to be willing to adapt and change. I think that those things are a lot easier when you have the best players in the league, or one of the best teams in the league. If you perhaps coming up against teams, respectfully to my own squad and players, that you think, yeah, they should be better than us in a lot of ways, maybe not going to be able to just do what you want to do. So I think we have to be willing to adapt, and we, I guess, starts with myself. And that's what we're looking at. But I'm certainly not set in stone we're now going to play sort of 3 at the back. And as I've said, that can look very different depending on what you come up against. There's different ways of playing systems as well. It's very simplistic to talk about a number that you see, on a game that you play on the PlayStation or something like that.
Yeah, and when you look at the goals you conceded on Saturday, and I know you weren't overly happy with that. Where are you at, do you think, defensively as a whole team? Where would you like to see improvements?
I think we've given away, for how many goals we've conceded, which is too many, we have given a lot of goals away. And I think, someone might say, well, there's always a mistake somewhere along that, but I mean things that should be avoidable. At the weekend, so I think both goals come from partly, and again, it's how sort of, I use the word nitpicky, you want to be, but from a bit of a not quite getting the structure right, because of having sort of 5 defenders in the build-up to both goals across that back line, and we didn't quite make the right decisions at times. There's more detail, a lot more detail in that in various points of the build-up to both goals. But by potentially having an extra defender out there, again, it's easy to fall into that trap of that makes you more secure. Not always the case. Saturday we had to change, in my view, because we weren't getting enough pressure right up the pitch, especially playing against 10 men. So we needed to sacrifice one of those defenders, and that worked. But we're just asking people to try and cut out individual errors, because I do think in terms of an organisation, we do enough work. we highlight enough things that players get spoken through about, whether it's a team, whether it's individuals. And sometimes, certain goals we've conceded, players have done things that I know they're better than. But maybe that fits in with confidence, etc. But, we're just hoping that we want teams to at least have to try and earn the goals that they score against us as much as possible.
Yeah, Carl Winchester on the bench. But like anybody, and he knows it, he's going to have to work hard to get back in. And are you happy with the partnership on Saturday with Ojo and Rossiter? In particular, the first half really seemed to be really on the ball.
Yeah, I thought they did very well at Bolton, and hence that was the reason why I stuck with that for the Crawley game and spoke to Carl about that. And I think, as I said after the game, he totally understood it. And I think if it was the other way around and say I'd then take him out of the team, I'm sure he'd have been coming knocking on the door, and in my view, rightly so. So he's integral to the squad. He'll get his minutes. I said glowingly about him, and like I said, that's not just to try and appease him. That's genuine. He wants the lads to win.